Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Miller. I'm 35 years old, and this story, well, it changed my life forever. Before I start, tell me, where are you watching from? I want to know, because no matter where you're from, I believe what I'm about to share will touch your heart. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, USA. My family wasn't rich, but we had enough. Every holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, even summer barbecues, there was one thing everyone could count on. I'd be the one in the kitchen, cooking for the whole family. For 16 long years. 16 years of mixing, stirring, baking, roasting. 16 years of smiling through exhaustion, of standing behind the kitchen counter while everyone else laughed around the living room fire. 16 years of pretending I didn't hear when people forgot to thank me. But that last holiday, something broke. It started with my dad's voice.
Sharp. Loud.
Angry. Useless thing. Bring food to your brother quickly. For a few seconds, I thought I'd heard wrong. My hands froze midair, holding a tray of roasted turkey and mashed potatoes. My heart thudded so hard I could barely breathe. He'd never called me that before. Everyone went silent. My mom, my brother, even my little niece who was playing with her doll stopped and looked at him. But I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I just placed the tray down, wiped my hands, and walked out. Out of the kitchen. Out of the house. Out of that life. The snow was falling hard that night. I remember the cold wind biting my cheeks as I walked down the street, still wearing my apron. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 26 missed calls. All from Dad. His last message read, "Please come back." I just stared at the screen for a long moment before typing 5 simple words. "The useless thing is busy." And I pressed send. That was the moment everything began to change. Now, let me take you back. Back to the beginning, before the shouting, before the silence, before the 26 missed calls. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house with my parents and my younger brother, Ethan. Ethan was the golden boy. Everyone loved him. He was tall, smart, and charming, one of those people who could talk himself out of any trouble. My dad adored him.
Me?
I was the quiet one, always trying to make peace, always helping, always doing the small things no one noticed. From the time I was 19, my mom had back problems and cooking became difficult for her. So I stepped in. I cooked every holiday meal. At first, because I wanted to help. I loved seeing people enjoy my food, loved the laughter that filled our house. Back then, Dad would smile and say, "Rachel, you make the best mashed potatoes in the world." I used to beam with pride at that. But as years passed, things changed. My dad's patience grew shorter. My mom stayed silent more often. Ethan moved out, then came back when things didn't go his way, always needing help, money, food, comfort. And every time he came home, I was expected to take care of him. Dad would say, "Rachel, make something nice for your brother. He's been through a lot." And I would. Every time. Even when I was tired. Even when I was struggling with my own problems. I worked as a part-time teacher's aide, which didn't pay much. My own apartment was tiny, barely enough for me, but during holidays, I always went home. I told myself family came first. Even when my father started snapping at me. Even when Ethan made fun of me for being just a helper. Still, I smiled. Still, I cooked. Because deep down, I thought that if I just kept being kind, someday they would see me. Someday they would appreciate me. But that day never came. Last Christmas, things were already tense. Ethan had lost his job again and moved back home. Dad was grumpy about everything. The lights not working, the snow, the bills. Mom tried to keep peace, but her silence felt heavy. I started preparing the meal 3 days early. Turkey, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole, pies. I wanted it to be perfect. The night before Christmas, I was up till 2 a.m., basting the turkey, when Ethan walked in holding his phone, laughing. "Still doing all this, huh?" he said, smirking. "You should open a restaurant or something. Might actually make money." I looked at him and smiled faintly. Someone has to make sure the family eats. He chuckled. Yeah, someone like you. It stung. But I let it go. Like always. The next morning, snow was falling thick outside. The house smelled like cinnamon and roast turkey. Mom smiled weakly when she saw the table, and even Dad seemed pleased for a moment. But then Ethan asked for his food first. And that was when it happened. Dad turned to me, his voice hard, his tone sharp. Useless thing. Bring food to your brother quickly. The words hit me like a slap. Useless thing. For 16 years, I had cooked every meal, every holiday, every celebration. And now I was a useless thing. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, feeling the world go quiet. Then, without a word, I untied my apron, set it on the counter, grabbed my coat, and walked out. Snow crunched under my boots as I left the house behind. My mom called my name faintly, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in 16 years, I didn't care if anyone ate. That night, I stayed in a small motel near the highway. My phone kept buzzing, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. The next morning, I saw the missed calls. 26 of them. All from Dad. And then his message. Please come back. I stared at the words for a long time before replying. The useless thing is busy. After that, silence. But I knew deep down, something had shifted. Something they didn't expect. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one waiting for their approval. For the first time, they were the ones waiting for me. And what happened after, no one saw coming. The next evening, as I sat in that motel room staring at the snow outside, I heard a knock on the door.
Slow.
Hesitant. I froze. Then I heard a familiar voice on the other side. It was my brother. I didn't move at first. I just sat there on the edge of the motel bed, my hands trembling slightly, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo in the small room. The knock came again. Rachel, please. It's me. Ethan's voice. The same voice that used to tease me, that used to laugh whenever I spilled something in the kitchen or burned the pie crust. The same voice that had called me bossy chef when I tried to get him to help out once. Now, that voice sounded tired. Almost broken. I stood slowly and walked toward the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. I wasn't sure if I was angry or just empty. I placed my hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn it. Go home, Ethan, I said quietly through the door. There was a pause. Then I heard him exhale. Please just open the door. I drove 2 hours looking for you. Something in his tone made me stop. 2 hours? In that snowstorm? I hesitated, then finally turned the knob. Ethan stood there, wrapped in his thick jacket, snow covering his shoulders and hair. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept all night. He looked smaller somehow. Dad's been calling everyone, he said quickly. He's really worried. Mom, too.
They didn't mean it, Ratch.
I crossed my arms. Didn't mean what? The part where he called me useless? Or the part where you sat there and said nothing? Ethan lowered his head. You're right. I didn't say anything. I should've. For a moment, we both stood there in silence. The heater hummed softly behind me. Outside, snow kept falling, painting the parking lot in white. Then Ethan looked up again. You have no idea what happened after you left. Something in his eyes made me uneasy. What do you mean? I asked. He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. Dad had some kind of panic attack. He couldn't breathe. Mom had to call an ambulance. I froze. What? He's okay now, Ethan said quickly. They said it was stress. But he kept asking for you. Wouldn't stop.
He didn't eat. Didn't sleep.
My heart twisted. I didn't know what to feel. Guilt?
Anger?
Fear? He wants to talk to you, Ethan said softly. Please, just come home. He's been crying, Rachel. I've never seen Dad cry before. I looked away. For years, I had been invisible. Now suddenly, I was the only one they wanted. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or heartbroken. I need time, I whispered. Ethan nodded slowly, disappointment flickering across his face. I understand. He slipped his hands into his jacket pockets and turned to leave. But just before walking away, he said quietly, You're not useless, Ratch. You never were. Then he left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the words in my head, both the ones that hurt and the ones that healed. Useless thing. You never were. I thought about Dad lying in a hospital bed, maybe hooked to machines, maybe realizing what he'd said. I thought about Mom, always caught in the middle, too quiet to defend me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to go back. I'd spent 16 years giving everything I had, my time, my effort, my love, and it had never been enough. Maybe now it was time I gave something to myself. The next morning, I checked out of the motel. I didn't go home, but I didn't go far either. I took a small bus to Portland, found a cheap apartment, and got a job as a cook at a local diner. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. For the first time, I cooked because I wanted to, not because I was expected to. The diner was small, with red booths, old jazz music, and a kind owner named Mrs. Carter. She was a warm woman in her late 50s who treated everyone like family. "You got magic hands, sweetheart," she told me after my first week. "Customers keep asking who made the stew." I smiled for real that day. A small, genuine smile. Weeks passed. I started to feel like myself again, like someone who could breathe. But every night, when the diner closed, I'd check my phone. There were always messages from Dad.
Some angry, some sad.
Some desperate. Then one evening, I received a video call from Mom. When I answered, her eyes were red and tired. Behind her, I could see the hospital room. "Rachel," she said softly, "your father wants to see you. Please." I swallowed hard. "Mom, I can't just." "Please, honey," she said again, tears welling up. "He's not well. He keeps saying your name." I looked at her face on the screen, pale and full of worry, and for a moment, I almost said yes. Almost. Then, I remembered all the years of being overlooked, the pain of that one word, useless, echoing in my mind. "I need time," I said again. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears.
Okay.
"Just don't wait too long." The call ended. I stood there in my small apartment, staring at the phone in my hand. The city lights blinked outside my window. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I needed space, that forgiveness takes time. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "What if it becomes too late?" The next morning, I went to work early, trying to distract myself. The diner was quiet, just me and Mrs. Carter setting up before the morning rush. She noticed I wasn't my usual self. "You okay, honey?" she asked gently, pouring coffee into mugs. I nodded quickly.
Yeah.
"Just didn't sleep much."
She studied me for a moment.
"You remind me of my daughter," she said. "Always taking care of everyone but herself." I chuckled faintly. "Guess that's my habit." Mrs. Carter smiled softly. "You know, sometimes the strongest people are the ones who finally walk away." Her words hit deep. I looked at her, wanting to tell her everything. But before I could, my phone buzzed again. Another message. From Ethan. It said only 5 words. "Dad's condition is getting worse." I froze. The coffee cup in my hand trembled slightly. My heart began to race. Was this really happening? Mrs. Carter noticed the color drain from my face. "Rachel? What is it?" I couldn't answer, because in that moment I knew my time to decide was running out. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the packed bag beside me. I didn't know if I was ready to face them. I didn't know what I would even say. But before I could make a choice, my phone rang again. It wasn't Ethan. It was a mom. It was a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a deep, serious voice spoke on the other end. "Hello, is this Rachel Miller?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is Officer Daniel from the Oregon State Police. There's been an incident involving your family. We need you to come in immediately." My breath caught in my throat. "What kind of incident?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The officer hesitated before replying. "It's your father." For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My mind went completely blank, like every sound around me had vanished. My father?" I managed to whisper. "What happened?" The officer's voice was calm but heavy. Ma'am, it's best if you come down to St. Mary's Hospital in Salem. I'll meet you there. Is he alive? I asked, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. There was a short pause. Then he said, he's in critical condition. My stomach dropped. I didn't even hang up properly. I just grabbed my coat, shoved my phone into my pocket, and ran. The snow outside had turned into freezing rain, but I didn't care. My boots splashed through puddles as I rushed toward the bus station. The whole way there, my thoughts were spinning. Critical condition.
Dad.
Hospital. Was this my fault? If I hadn't left that night, if I had just swallowed my pride one more time like I always did, maybe none of this would have happened. The bus ride to Salem felt like forever. Every second felt heavier than the last. The sky was gray, and the windows fogged up, making everything outside look like a blur. When I finally reached the hospital, my hands were shaking so much I could barely fill out the visitor form. The receptionist must have noticed because she quietly said, "Take a deep breath, sweetheart. Room 214. Room 214. When I walked into the hallway, I saw Mom sitting in one of the waiting chairs, her face pale, eyes swollen from crying. Mom? She looked up slowly, and when she saw me, she stood so fast she nearly dropped her purse. Rachel. Her arms wrapped around me tightly, trembling. Oh, thank God you came. Where is he? I asked, my voice barely holding. She sniffed and pointed toward the door behind her. He's inside. They said it was a heart attack. They're trying to stabilize him. I froze in place. The walls felt like they were closing in. Heart attack. Mom, I whispered. Is he going to make it? She didn't answer right away. Her lips quivered, her eyes filling again. I don't know, honey. I don't know. I sank into the chair beside her. My heartbeat was so loud it hurt. For a long while, we just sat there in silence. The only sounds were the soft beeps of machines and the faint cries from other rooms. Then, a doctor came out of Dad's room, a tall man with kind eyes and a clipboard in his hand. Mrs. Miller, he said gently, your husband's stable for now, but he'll need constant monitoring. We'll keep him overnight. Mom nodded quickly, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The doctor turned to me. Are you his daughter? I nodded. He's been asking for you, the doctor said softly. He's awake. Just for a few minutes. My throat tightened. He wants to see me? Yes. Mom touched my arm. Go, sweetheart. I stood up slowly, each step toward that door feeling like walking through water. When I pushed it open, I saw him.
Dad.
He looked smaller, weaker, his skin pale, his lips dry, his body covered in wires and monitors. For a second, I just stood there, unable to move. His eyes opened slowly, and when they met mine, something inside me cracked. Rachel, he whispered.
His voice was raspy, weak.
You came? I nodded, trying to hold back tears. Yeah, I came. He reached out a trembling hand. I hesitated for a second, then took it. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't mean what I said. I was angry. Stupid. My eyes filled instantly. Dad, stop. You need to rest. No, he said, shaking his head slowly. You need to hear this. He took a shaky breath. You've always been the heart of this family. Always giving, never asking for anything. And his voice cracked. I took that for granted. Tears ran down my cheeks before I could stop them. Dad. He squeezed my hand weakly. You're not useless, Rachel. You never were. He coughed, wincing in pain. Dad. I called out, panic rising. The monitors began to beep faster. A nurse rushed in, followed by two more. Ma'am, please step back, one of them said firmly. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the nurses worked quickly around him.
Dad.
I shouted, but they were already pushing me toward the door. Please wait outside. The door closed, leaving me staring at the small window, watching as the team surrounded him. Mom rushed toward me, fear written all over her face. What's happening? I couldn't even answer. My mouth opened, but no words came out. All I could do was watch. The steady beeping of the heart monitor became faster, louder, then suddenly flatlined. A long, piercing sound filled the hallway. Mom screamed, and I stood there, frozen, as the world around me seemed to collapse. They managed to revive him after what felt like forever. The doctors called it a close call. But even after they said he was stable again, I couldn't shake the image of that flat line from my mind. When we finally got to see him again later that night, he was asleep. Mom sat quietly beside the bed, her hands clasped in prayer. Ethan arrived a few minutes later, his eyes red. He hugged me tight. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't. Barely. We stayed there in silence, listening to the steady rhythm of the heart monitor, each beep a reminder of how fragile everything was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the hospital window, staring at the dark sky, thinking about everything. The anger, the guilt, the years I had given up for them. I realized something. Even though Dad's words had cut deep, even though I had walked away, I still loved him. I still loved my family. But love doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning when to forgive and when to protect your heart. 2 days later, Dad was discharged. The doctors said he needed rest and no stress. Mom was relieved. Ethan promised to handle everything at home. When we got back to the house, I helped settle Dad in. He was quiet, softer somehow. That evening, as I was about to leave, he called out to me, "Rachel." "Yes, Dad." He looked at me for a long moment, then said something I didn't expect. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning it." Tears filled my eyes again. I nodded slowly. "Then start by treating Mom better. And Ethan too. Make him help for once." Dad smiled weakly. "Deal." For the first time in years, I laughed. But little did I know, that promise, those quiet days of peace, would not last long. Because a few weeks later, I would uncover something in that house that changed everything again. Something that would make me question whether Dad's attack had really been just an accident. 3 weeks passed after Dad's discharge, and things at home seemed peaceful. Too peaceful. Mom smiled more. Ethan acted nicer. And Dad, well, he was almost unrecognizable. He was gentle, quiet, and full of regret. He'd thank me every time I brought him tea, or when I helped him take his medicine. Sometimes, he'd just stare out the window and whisper. I almost lost everything. I wanted to believe that the storm was finally over. But I had no idea that the calm I felt was just the silence before another wave hit. One chilly Saturday morning, I decided to visit my parents again. I had moved back to my small apartment in Portland after Dad's release, but I made sure to come by on weekends to help Mom with groceries. When I arrived, the air in the house felt different. There was a smell, something faint but sharp like smoke. "Mom," I called. No answer. I walked toward the kitchen and froze. The stove was on, the flame high, and a pot of soup boiling over. The soup had spilled down the sides, burning on the stove's edge. "Mom," I yelled, rushing to turn off the gas. I turned around, panic rising in my chest. That's when I saw her. Mom was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV, which wasn't even on. I hurried over. "Mom, are you okay?" "The stove." She blinked slowly, as if coming out of a daze. "Oh, I forgot." I frowned. "Forgot? You left the stove on, Mom. You could have burned the house down." Her lips trembled. "I didn't mean to. I was thinking." I knelt beside her. "Thinking about what?" She hesitated, then whispered. "About your father." "What about him?" I asked gently. She turned her eyes toward the hallway, leading to his room. "He's been talking in his sleep, saying strange things." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" She leaned closer, her voice shaking. "He says names, numbers, something about money. And once he said, she can't find out." "She?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Mom nodded. "I don't know who he means. But, Rachel, he wakes up sweating. Sometimes shouting." I glanced down the hallway. His door was slightly open, and I could see him lying on the bed, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Something about the whole thing felt off. Was it just a bad dream? Or was there something he wasn't telling us? That evening, after Mom went to rest, I decided to clean the house a bit. It was something I used to do often: tidy up, fold laundry, make sure the medicine bottles were arranged. But this time, as I cleaned, I noticed something strange. Dad's old briefcase, the one he always kept locked, was sitting under his desk. Unlocked. That briefcase had been his pride for years. He'd never let anyone touch it, not even Mom. Curiosity tugged at me. I hesitated for a long time before kneeling down and opening it. Inside were old papers, bills, and a few photos. But then, tucked beneath some folders, I found a small black notebook, the kind used for keeping records. I opened it slowly. The first few pages were filled with numbers, dates, amounts, and initials. At first, I thought it was just financial notes, but the more I flipped through it, the stranger it got. Some entries were written in shaky handwriting, like he'd written them while nervous. December 14th, payment confirmed. She doesn't know yet. January 4th, Ethan involved now. Must stay quiet. If Rachel finds out, it's over. I froze. Rachel. My name. I flipped the pages faster, my heart racing. There was one more line at the end, half scribbled, almost unreadable. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. I dropped the notebook, my breath catching in my throat. What did that mean? Was Dad hiding something before his heart attack? And what did Ethan have to do with it? I picked up the notebook again, flipping to the last page. There was something else, an address written in the corner. It was in downtown Portland, and underneath it, one word: bank. I stared at it, my hands trembling. A bank? Was he hiding money? Was someone blackmailing him? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. This wasn't just about a heart attack anymore. Something bigger was going on. The next morning, I went back to my apartment and couldn't stop thinking about the notebook. I tried to distract myself by going to work at the diner, but even as customers came and went, those words kept echoing in my mind. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. That night, I finally made up my mind. I'd go to the address. I waited until Sunday morning. The air was cold, the streets quiet. When I reached the address, I realized it wasn't a regular bank. It was a storage facility, the kind people use to keep valuable documents or safety deposit boxes. My stomach twisted. I walked inside and asked the clerk, "Hi, I'm here to check if there's a box under the name Robert Miller." The woman behind the counter checked her computer. "Yes, there is, but only authorized users can access it." I hesitated, then said softly, "I'm his daughter. He's recovering from a heart condition." She looked at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry, miss. If you bring a signed authorization, we can help." Defeated, I turned to leave, but just as I was about to walk out, I saw someone across the street. Someone familiar. Ethan. He was standing by a black car, talking to a man I didn't recognize. The man was wearing a dark jacket and sunglasses. They seemed tense, whispering quickly. Then, Ethan handed him a brown envelope. My heart skipped. I ducked behind a parked car, peeking over. The man counted something, cash, maybe, and nodded before getting into the car and driving away. Ethan looked around nervously, then started walking down the street. I stayed hidden until he disappeared from sight. My mind was spinning. What had I just seen? Why was Ethan giving someone money outside a storage facility tied to Dad's secret notebook? I didn't have the answers, but deep down, I knew something dark was unfolding right under our noses. And worse, it looked like my brother was part of it. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The thought of confronting Ethan terrified me, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. When I finally worked up the courage, I called him. He answered quickly, his voice calm but uneasy. "Hey, Rach. Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Actually, I was downtown earlier." He paused. "Oh."
Yeah.
"Near a storage facility." I waited. "I saw you." Silence. Then his voice dropped low. Rachel, you don't understand what you saw. Then explain it. He sighed deeply. Not over the phone.
Come by the house tomorrow.
I'll tell you everything. Promise. Yeah, he said quietly. But, Rachel, don't tell Mom or Dad. Please. My pulse raced. Why not? Just trust me. Then he hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. What was he hiding? And why was Dad writing about it in secret? One thing was certain. Whatever Ethan planned to tell me tomorrow, it wouldn't be something I'd forget. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan outside that storage facility, his hand shaking as he passed that brown envelope to the stranger. By morning, I'd replayed the scene 100 times in my mind. Was he paying someone off? Was he in trouble? Or worse, was he the reason for Dad's heart attack? By 9 a.m., I was already driving toward the family house. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, the winter air fogging up the windshield. My heart pounded the closer I got. When I arrived, the driveway was empty. Dad's car was gone. Mom's too. Only Ethan's truck sat out front, covered in frost. I knocked once. No answer. I tried again. Ethan? It's me. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack, and Ethan's tired face appeared. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Rachel, he said quietly, glancing behind me like he was making sure I hadn't brought anyone. Come in. I stepped inside. The house was cold. Too quiet. Ethan motioned toward the living room. Mom took Dad to his doctor's appointment. They'll be gone for a few hours. Okay, I said carefully, taking a seat on the couch. Now tell me what's going on.
He didn't answer right away.
Instead, he walked over to the window, looking out into the yard like he was searching for words. Finally, he said, Dad wasn't honest with us, Rachel. Not about a lot of things. I frowned. What do you mean? Ethan turned to face me, his eyes heavy. Remember when I lost my job last year? When I moved back home?
Yeah.
He exhaled. Dad offered to help me. Said he had some savings set aside. But later, I found out that money wasn't savings. It was something else. What kind of something else? I asked, my stomach tightening. Ethan hesitated. He took out a loan under my name. I blinked. What? Yeah, he said bitterly. He forged my signature. Used my social security number. When I found out, I was furious. But he begged me not to report it. He said he'd pay it back soon. That it was all for family reasons. I sat back, stunned. Oh my God, Ethan. He nodded. I didn't know what to do. So I tried to help. I started taking on side jobs, some legal, some not so much. But the debt kept growing. Then the people he borrowed from started calling me. He rubbed his face, his voice breaking slightly. That's who you saw me talking to yesterday.
They're not good people, Rach.
They wanted their money. I swallowed hard. So, you were paying them?
Trying to, he said.
But I don't even know how deep Dad got us into this. He won't tell me. Every time I ask, he changes the subject. I thought back to the notebook, the notes about payments, names, the warning. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Ethan, I said slowly, there's something you should see. I reached into my bag and pulled out the black notebook. His face went pale. Where did you get that? It was in Dad's briefcase, I said quietly. Mom said he's been talking in his sleep about money, names, and someone he doesn't want me to find out about. Ethan took the notebook carefully, flipping through the pages.
His jaw tightened as he read.
If Rachel finds out, it's over, he read aloud. He looked up, eyes wide. What does that mean? I don't know, I said. But I think there's something he's been hiding from both of us. He stared down at the page again. Wait, what? He pointed to one of the initials scribbled in the margins. These letters, MK, that's the same name the men mentioned when they called me. They said, tell your father MK doesn't wait forever. A chill ran through me. So whoever this MK is, Dad owed him money. Ethan nodded grimly. And it sounds like a lot. We sat in silence for a while, both of us trying to process everything. Then Ethan said, when Dad had his heart attack, I always thought it was stress. But now, I'm not so sure. I froze. What are you saying? He met my eyes. What if someone made it happen? What if the heart attack wasn't natural? My pulse raced. I remember the doctor's words that night. He'll need monitoring. It was stress-induced. But what if it wasn't? What if they tried to send him a message? Ethan said quietly. And what if they're not done yet? Before I could answer, we both jumped at the sound of a loud knock on the door. Ethan tensed instantly. Stay here, he whispered. I watched as he walked slowly toward the door, peeking through the curtain. He turned pale. Who is it? I whispered. He looked back at me. It's him. Who? MK. Before I could even react, the knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice.
Deep. Calm.
Cold. Ethan, open the door. We need to talk. I felt my whole body go cold. Ethan motioned for me to stay hidden. He opened the door slightly, just enough to show his face. What do you want? Ethan asked, trying to sound steady. The man outside wore a black coat, his hair slicked back, and his eyes sharp like glass. He smiled faintly. I just came to remind you about our arrangement, he said smoothly. Your father's debt is past due. I told you, I'm working on it, Ethan said quickly. The man leaned closer. You said that last week. I just need more time. The man's eyes flicked toward the hallway, and for a terrifying second, I realized he could see me standing near the living room. His expression changed. Well, he said slowly. You must be Rachel. I froze. Ethan turned sharply. Don't talk to her. But the man ignored him. Your father spoke about you. Said you were the smart one. The careful one. Maybe you can help him clear his mistake. What mistake? I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled coldly. The kind that costs more than money. Then he reached into his coat pocket, and my heart nearly stopped. Don't, Ethan shouted, stepping forward. The man didn't pull out a weapon. Instead, he held up a photograph. He handed it to Ethan. Consider this a warning. Then he turned, walked to his car, and drove off without another word. The moment he was gone, Ethan locked the door and turned the photo around. It was a picture of our parents, taken through the living room window. Someone had been watching them. For weeks, maybe longer. I felt sick to my stomach. Ethan, I whispered. This isn't just debt, is it? He swallowed hard.
No.
It's not. He looked at the picture again, his hands trembling. Dad wasn't the only one they were after. I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered so hard it echoed in my ears. For years, I had thought my life revolved around kitchens, family dinners, and the quiet peace of holidays. But right now, standing in that cold living room, staring at that photograph, I realized how much I didn't know about my own family. Ethan's hands trembled as he placed the picture down on the coffee table. It was a close-up, our parents sitting by the window. It wasn't some random snapshot. It was taken from outside, through the glass. Someone had been close. Too close. Ethan, I said softly, how long has this been happening? He ran a hand through his hair. Since before the heart attack, I think. I'd see cars parked on the street, headlights turning off as soon as I stepped outside. I thought I was being paranoid. But you didn't tell me? He looked at me with tired eyes. You stopped talking to us, Rachel. After Dad called you that night, after he called you useless. I bit my lip. That word still hurt every time I heard it. Even now, it cut through me like glass. He continued. You were angry. You left. And I didn't want to drag you into all this. You didn't deserve to get caught in it. I stared at him, torn between anger and fear. You should have told me. I could have helped. Helped how? He said bitterly. They don't want help. They want what Dad promised them. And now that he can't pay, they're coming for us. I sat down on the couch, my knees weak. We need to call the police. He shook his head instantly. You don't understand. These people don't leave witnesses. If we go to the cops, they'll find out. They always do. I stood up. So what, Ethan? We just wait for them to show up again. He didn't answer. His silence was the worst part. I walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. Outside, the street looked calm.
Quiet.
Snowflakes were falling, soft and harmless. It was hard to believe danger could be hiding behind something so peaceful. Then I noticed something. A black SUV parked across the street, engine running. My stomach dropped. Ethan? He came to the window, eyes narrowing. That's them. Before I could even react, he grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the window. Get to the basement.
What?
No. Now, he hissed. They can't see you here. We rushed downstairs, my heart racing so fast I could barely think. The basement smelled like old wood and dust. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, flicked it on, and pointed to an old chest. What's that? I asked. He hesitated. Dad's emergency box. He told me to never open it unless something went wrong. I blinked. Ethan, everything is wrong right now. He took a deep breath, then snapped the latch open. Inside were folders, envelopes, and a few photographs. Some were labeled with names. My eyes widened when I saw one marked, MK, Personal Records. Ethan flipped it open. There were notes, bank transfers, copies of contracts, and an old photo of a man shaking Dad's hand. It was the same man who had just stood at our door. MK, I whispered. That's him. Ethan stared at the paper. Dad must have been doing business with him. Illegal business. Business? What kind of business would need a folder like this? I asked. He looked grim. Money laundering, maybe. Or worse. Then something caught my eye at the bottom of the box, a small sealed envelope with my name on it. Rachel, I said aloud, holding it up. Ethan frowned. Open it. I tore the seal. Inside was a handwritten note from Dad. Rachel, if you're reading this, then I've failed to protect you. I know you've always been the kind one, the only one who believed in family, even when I didn't deserve it. I've made mistakes trying to keep this family safe. Mistakes that can't be undone. If MK ever finds you, do not negotiate. Don't trust him. Leave town. Protect your brother. You'll understand soon.
Dad.
My throat went dry. He knew this would happen. Ethan clenched his jaw. He tried to protect us, but he couldn't stop it. The sound of a car door slamming upstairs made both of us freeze. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming toward the front door. Ethan whispered, "They're here." We turned off the flashlight instantly. The basement went pitch dark. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. A faint creak echoed from above, the living room floorboards groaning. Someone was inside. Ethan grabbed a crowbar from the tool rack, his breathing sharp. He motioned for me to stay back. I held my breath. Then, suddenly, footsteps on the basement stairs. 1 step.
2.
3. The shadow of boots appeared in the thin line of light under the basement door. I squeezed my eyes shut. Please, let it be Dad. Please, let it be anyone else. But then a voice came, low and calm, the same cold voice from earlier. "Ethan," the man said softly, "I told you not to make this harder than it has to be." Ethan tensed. The door handle turned slowly. Then bang. The door flew open. A man in a black coat stepped in, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. I gasped, and his light landed right on my face. "Well," he said with a faint smile. "Looks like the whole family's here." Ethan stepped in front of me, raising the crowbar. "Leave her out of this." The man chuckled.
Brave.
I like that. I could see another figure behind him now, taller, wearing gloves. The second man said, "You've got 5 minutes to tell us where it is." Ethan frowned. "Where what is?" "The documents," the man replied sharply. "Your father promised them before he disappeared. He's in the hospital." I snapped. "He didn't disappear." The man smiled darkly. "We know exactly where he is. But if you don't want him to stop breathing, I suggest you cooperate." My blood ran cold. Ethan gritted his teeth. "You're not getting anything." The man sighed. "Wrong answer." He raised the gun. And before I could even scream, something shattered upstairs. Glass exploding. The sound made everyone freeze. The men looked at each other. What was that? A voice echoed from above, firm and commanding. Police! Drop your weapon. Ethan's eyes widened. How? Before the man could respond, the basement door burst open again. Flashlights flooding the room. Hands where we can see them. It was the police. Everything exploded into chaos, shouting, movement, handcuffs snapping. The men tried to run, but officers tackled them down hard. I stood frozen, shaking, as one of the officers led me and Ethan up the stairs. Outside, red and blue lights painted the snow. An officer looked at me and said, "You're safe now. We've been tracking them for weeks." But I couldn't feel safe. Not yet. Because as they dragged the men to their cars, MK looked up at me with that same cold smirk. And he whispered, "It's not over, Rachel." Back inside, after everything quieted, Ethan sat on the couch with his head in his hands. I sat beside him. "Ethan, how did they know? How did the police get here?" He looked at me slowly. "I didn't call them." "Then who did?" Just then his phone buzzed. One new message. From Dad. It read, "Don't trust anyone. Not even the police. They're not who they say they are." My heart stopped. I turned to Ethan. "What does that mean?" He stared at the message, his face pale. "I think," he whispered, "we just made things worse." The room went cold. Ethan's hand trembled as he held the phone. The message from Dad glowed on the screen, short but terrifying. "Don't trust anyone. Not even the police. They're not who they say they are." My breath caught. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights still painted the windows, casting strange shadows across the walls. Two officers were speaking quietly on the porch, their silhouettes dark against the glow. "Ethan," I whispered, "what if he's right?" He looked at me, his eyes uncertain. "You think the police are working with them?" "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "But Dad doesn't text things like that unless he means it. Remember when he warned you about the men in the truck last year?" Ethan nodded slowly. That warning had saved his life. He stood up and peeked through the window blinds. "They're loading MK into the car. But something's off. Why are they taking him in an unmarked vehicle?" I moved beside him.
He was right.
There were no police logos. No badges on the car doors. Just a plain black SUV, the same kind MK had arrived in earlier. A wave of dread rolled through me. "Ethan," I whispered, "that's not a squad car." He stepped back, eyes wide. "Oh no." Before we could react, one of the supposed officers looked up from the driveway and locked eyes with us through the window. His gaze lingered just long enough to make my blood turn to ice. Then he spoke into his radio, nodding once, like he was giving an order. Ethan grabbed my arm. "We have to leave.
Now."
We ran to the back door, hearts pounding. The cold night air hit my face like ice as we stepped into the yard. Snow crunched beneath our boots. Ethan whispered, "My truck's parked down the street. If we can get to it." Before he finished, headlights flared behind us. Another black SUV. I froze. Doors slammed. Boots hit the ground. 3 men in dark coats moved toward us. "Go!" Ethan shouted. We sprinted across the yard, slipping on the icy ground. I could hear the men shouting, voices sharp and commanding. "Stop right there." Ethan turned, grabbed a shovel leaning against the fence, and swung it toward one of them. The man ducked, shouting in pain as it clipped his shoulder. "Keep running," Ethan yelled. I didn't look back. We bolted through the neighbor's yard, past the frozen garden, and into the dark alley behind the houses. My lungs burned, my breath turning to white fog in the freezing air. Behind us, engines roared. Ethan pointed ahead. There, at the end of the alley, his old red pickup truck sat under a flickering streetlight. We dove in. Ethan fumbled with the keys, hands shaking. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life. "Hold on," he said, slamming his foot on the gas. The tires screeched as we sped out of the alley. Behind us, the SUVs turned, headlights blinding, chasing us down the empty street. I looked back and saw one of the men leaning out the window, talking into a radio. "They're coordinating," I gasped. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Then we'll lose them." He swerved hard onto a side road, snow spraying behind us. The chase lights blurred in the rearview mirror. My hands gripped the seat tight, knuckles white. We drove for miles, weaving through back roads and icy turns until the city lights faded and all that was left was forest and darkness. Finally, after what felt like hours, Ethan slowed down and pulled off near an abandoned gas station. The truck idled quietly. We sat there, both breathing hard, hearts still pounding. "Did we lose them?" I whispered. Ethan nodded slowly, though his eyes kept scanning the road. "I think so. For now." I leaned back against the seat, shaking. "What's happening to us, Ethan? Why is Dad involved in all this?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said quietly, "Because Dad wasn't just borrowing money. He was hiding something. Something they want back." I frowned. What could he possibly have that's so important? Ethan opened the glove compartment and pulled out Dad's black notebook, the one I'd found earlier. He flipped to the last few pages, the ones filled with numbers and scribbles. "I thought these were payment records," he said, "but look." He pointed to a set of coordinates scribbled in the corner, underlined twice. I squinted. "Is that a location?" He nodded. "Looks like it. Somewhere near Millbrook." "Millbrook? That's 2 hours away." "Exactly," Ethan said. "Far enough that no one would stumble onto it by accident." He traced a finger under Dad's final line of handwriting. "If I'm gone, Rachel will know what to do." My chest tightened. What if this is what they're looking for? "Then we find it before they do," Ethan said. We drove again, quiet, tense, every sound of the wind making me jump. The road stretched ahead, lonely and dark. At one point, I checked my phone. 27 missed calls. All from Mom. I opened one text. "Where are you?" "They came to the hospital." "Your father, he's gone." My heart stopped. "Ethan," I whispered, showing him the phone. "Dad's missing." He glanced at the screen, his face tightening. Then this just got worse. When we finally reached Millbrook, it was nearly 2 a.m. The air was freezing, the sky a dark blue-gray, heavy with snow clouds. The coordinates led us to an old cabin deep in the woods, almost invisible in the dark. Ethan parked the truck a few feet away, turned off the engine, and grabbed the flashlight. "Are you sure this is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded.
"Yeah."
"This is the exact spot." The snow crunched under our feet as we approached the cabin. It looked abandoned, broken windows, sagging roof, the door barely hanging on its hinges. Ethan pushed it open. The smell of damp would hit us immediately. Inside, the air was thick and still. Dust floated through the beam of the flashlight. "Check over there," he whispered, pointing to a corner filled with old crates. I knelt down and started opening them. Inside were papers, faded photos, and, oddly, stacks of old ID cards. "Ethan," I said slowly, "these have different names, but they all have Dad's picture." He froze. "What?" I showed him one, an ID labeled Marcus Kane. Another said Daniel Moore. Ethan's face drained of color. "Rachel. MK." I blinked.
"What?"
"MK," he repeated, voice low and shaking. "Marcus Kane. Dad wasn't working for him. He was him." The truth hit me like a storm. Our father was MK, the man everyone feared, the man the police, or whoever they were, had been chasing, the man we thought was the victim. And before we could even process it, the sound of tires crunching outside shattered the silence. Headlights cut through the cracks in the cabin walls. Ethan turned off the flashlight instantly. "Rachel," he whispered, "they found us." We dove behind a stack of crates as the door burst open. Voices filled the cabin, calm, professional, but deadly serious. "Search everything," one said. "He's here somewhere." I gripped Ethan's arm, my pulse racing. Boots thudded across the floor, flashlights sweeping. Then one beam landed on the IDs scattered near the crates. "There," A man said. Found them. He was here. Another voice spoke from the doorway, deep and familiar. Good, it said. Then we're not too late. Ethan's eyes widened. It was Dad's voice. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. That voice, Dad's voice, cut through the darkness like lightning. My heart thudded in my chest as I turned toward the cabin door. There he was, standing in the doorway, pale from exhaustion, but very much alive. Snow clung to his shoulders, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. He wasn't in hospital clothes anymore. He was wearing a dark coat, clean, pressed, and too familiar. Ethan whispered, Dad. Our father looked at him, then at me. You shouldn't have come here. Ethan stood up slowly, his face filled with confusion and anger. You disappeared, Dad. Mom said you were missing. We've been running from people who want to kill us. Dad's expression didn't change. I told you to stay away from Millbrook. I stepped forward. What is this place? Why were those men chasing us? What's going on? He looked down for a moment, then sighed. Everything I built to protect you is falling apart because you wouldn't listen. Protect us? Ethan snapped. You forged my name on a loan. You hid things from us. You lied about everything. Dad's voice rose, sharp and tired. You think this was about money? You think this is about a loan? Ethan, open your eyes. I did what I had to do to keep this family alive. His words hung in the air like smoke. I took a step closer, trembling. Alive? What are you talking about? He hesitated, then glanced toward the men standing behind him, armed, watchful. You shouldn't have brought her, he said quietly. One of the men spoke up. Sir, we have to leave. They tracked the signal. 5 minutes, Dad ordered. No one comes in. The man nodded and stepped outside. Then Dad turned to us again, his face softening for the first time. I never wanted you two to see this side of me. Ethan's voice cracked. Who are you, Dad? He walked toward us, the wooden floor creaking under his boots. The man you call MK, Marcus Kane, is me. But I wasn't running from them. I was running because of them. I felt dizzy. You mean the police? Or those men? He shook his head. Both. He pointed at the old crates filled with IDs and papers. Those were my covers. For 16 years, I've worked for an underground intelligence division off the books. Our job was to infiltrate criminal networks and take them down from the inside. Ethan frowned. You're saying you were a spy? Dad half smiled. Not the kind that wears tuxedos and drinks martinis. But yes, something like that. I got too close to something too dangerous. I tried to back out, but by then, I had already signed my life away. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. Why didn't you tell us? Because telling you would have made you targets. His eyes met mine. Which you are now because you didn't stay away. Anger flared in Ethan's eyes. You're blaming us for this? I'm blaming the people who found you because of me, Dad said. The men who came to the house, they weren't random criminals. They were my old partners. And now they want everything I have. Everything? I asked quietly. The files, Dad said, nodding toward the folder Ethan was holding. That notebook isn't just numbers, it's evidence. Proof that they've been selling classified intel to foreign buyers. If that gets out, half the country burns. My stomach twisted. So, we've been dragged into something that could destroy everything? Dad nodded grimly.
Yes.
And if they don't get what they want, they'll destroy us first. The room went silent. Only the wind outside filled the space. Then Ethan whispered, So, what do we do now? Dad looked toward the door. Now we run. He turned to the crates and started pulling out papers, quickly stuffing them into a duffel bag. They'll come through that door any minute. We need to be out before they do. Where are we going? I asked. There's a safe house north of here, he said. Once we get there, we'll contact the only person I still trust. Ethan frowned. And who's that? Before Dad could answer, a gunshot exploded outside. The windows shattered. Get down, Dad shouted, pulling me to the floor as bullets tore through the walls. Ethan crawled toward the crates, grabbing the crowbar from earlier. Dad drew a pistol from under his coat, something I'd never seen him hold in my life, and fired back through the doorway. For a few seconds, the cabin was chaos. Splintering wood, shattered glass, the smell of gunpowder and smoke. "Ethan," Dad shouted. "Get her to the truck." "I'm not leaving you," I screamed. "Rachel, go." Another shot whizzed past my ear. I grabbed Ethan's arm and ran toward the back door, ducking low. We burst outside into the freezing air. The woods were alive with shouting voices and flashlight beams cutting through the dark. Ethan and I ran, snow crunching beneath our boots, hearts hammering. Behind us, gunfire echoed through the night.
Dad.
I yelled. He didn't answer. We reached the truck, and Ethan fumbled for the keys again. Come on, come on." The engine roared. He hit the gas just as another SUV appeared on the road ahead, headlights blinding. "Down," Ethan yelled, swerving hard. The truck skidded, barely missing the other vehicle, and tore down a side path through the woods. Branches scraped against the windows as we bounced over the frozen ground. I turned around, just in time to see the cabin behind us engulfed in flames. "No," I whispered. Ethan's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "He's still in there." I couldn't speak. Tears blurred my vision. The fire grew brighter, looking up into the sky. And through the haze, I thought I saw a figure, just for a second, standing in the doorway before the cabin collapsed.
"Dad."
I screamed, but he didn't move. And then the roof came down. The explosion shook the ground. We drove until the fire was just a faint orange glow behind the trees. Neither of us said a word. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the sound of the tires and the whisper of the wind. Finally, Ethan whispered. He told us to run. I stared out the window, tears streaking my face. And we did. But inside, I knew it wasn't over. Because Dad's warning still echoed in my head. Don't trust anyone. And something deep in my gut told me. He wasn't gone. Not yet. The road stretched endlessly through the forest, swallowed by the night. The storm had died down, but the silence that followed was worse. Every sound, the crack of a branch, the hum of the tires, felt like an alarm bell. Ethan hadn't spoken in nearly an hour. His eyes were fixed on the road, face pale and tight with grief. The glow of the dashboard reflected off the notebook on my lap, the same one Dad had risked everything to hide. Finally, I broke the silence. We have to go back. Ethan didn't even glance at me.
No.
We can't just leave him. He's gone, Rachel. His voice cracked. You saw the explosion. I shook my head fiercely. You didn't see what I saw. He turned, eyes flashing. You saw a burning building. He told us to run, and that's exactly what we're doing. But what if he planned that? I said quietly. Dad doesn't die like that, Ethan. He was too calm, too prepared. He even said he had a safe house. What if he went there? Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You think he staged his own death? After everything? I don't know what to think anymore. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The engine hummed, steady and low. Then Ethan exhaled. Even if you're right, where do we go? We don't know where the safe house is. I glanced down at the notebook. Maybe we do. He frowned. What do you mean? I flipped through the pages again, past the coded lines, past the list of names, until I reached the very back. There, in faint pencil marks, was something new I hadn't noticed before, a sketch of a mountain range with an X drawn near a river. Below it, in Dad's messy handwriting, were 5 letters. RICHD. Ethan leaned closer. RICHD? What does that even mean? I shrugged. A code, maybe. Or coordinates.
He groaned.
I'm done with riddles. We need fuel, food, and a place to hide before they find us again. Just as he said that, headlights flashed in the rearview mirror. Ethan's grip tightened. Rachel, you seeing that? I turned. A dark SUV was speeding up behind us, fast. Oh no. Hold on. Ethan slammed the accelerator. The truck roared forward, tires kicking up snow and mud. The SUV closed in, its lights flickering, trying to blind us. Then came the first gunshot, shattering the back window. I screamed and ducked. Ethan swerved hard, the truck fishtailing on the icy road. Get down. Another bullet tore through the side mirror. Glass exploded everywhere. Ethan, we can't outrun them. He gritted his teeth. Watch me. We hit a bend in the road, tires screaming as we drifted sideways. The SUV followed, closing the gap. I reached into the glove box, searching for anything, tools, a flare gun, anything. My fingers brushed against cold metal. A pistol.
Small. Black.
Loaded. I froze. Ethan. He glanced at me, then the gun. You know how to use it?
No.
Then aim low and don't miss. The SUV rammed us, sending the truck lurching forward. I nearly dropped the weapon. My heart pounded as I turned, aimed through the shattered back window, and fired. The shot missed, but the next one hit the SUV's headlight, bursting it into sparks. They're backing off, Ethan shouted. But they weren't. The SUV swerved again, scraping the truck's rear bumper. I fired twice more, this time hitting the hood. Smoke poured out, but the driver didn't stop. Rachel. Ethan yelled. Bridge. I looked ahead. An old wooden bridge stretched across a half-frozen river. The rails were thin, the drop steep. We're not making that. Hold on. Ethan floored it. The truck shot forward, the SUV right behind us. We hit the bridge at full speed. The planks creaked and splintered beneath the tires. Halfway across, I heard another shot, this one hitting a tire. The truck jerked violently. Ethan. He fought the wheel. Almost there. The back end swerved, slammed against the railing, and half the bridge collapsed behind us. The SUV didn't stop in time. It skidded sideways, hit the broken section, and plunged into the freezing river below. Ethan slammed the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt at the other end. For a long moment, we just sat there, panting, shaking, staring at the smoke rising from the wreckage below. Ethan leaned back, breathing hard. That was too close. I lowered the pistol, hands trembling. Who were they? He looked at me, eyes dark. Dad's old partners. Who else? The cold wind howled through the broken windows. We both knew this wasn't over. Then I glanced back at the notebook again. The sketch, the letters, the faint X near the river. My pulse quickened. Ethan, I whispered. That river, it looks like this one. He blinked. You're saying the safe house could be right here? I nodded. Maybe that's what he meant by RICHD. He frowned. Or maybe it's a trap. Maybe, I said softly. But it's the only clue we have left. Ethan looked toward the river, smoke curling from the wreck below, and finally nodded. Then we find it, before they find us. The moon was barely visible through the fog as Ethan and I climbed down the snowy embankment toward the river. Our breath rose in white clouds, and the icy air stung my skin. The world felt eerily silent, except for the distant creak of the half-broken bridge above. Ethan held a flashlight, sweeping it across the frozen water. You really think there's something down here? He muttered, his teeth chattering. I nodded, clutching the notebook to my chest. Dad drew the river. The X was right around this bend. We reached the river's edge, where the ice glistened like glass. The current beneath moved slow but deep, dark and unforgiving. I crouched and brushed away snow near the rocks. Something metallic gleamed, faintly, under the frost. Ethan, I whispered. Look. He knelt beside me, scraping the ice with his glove until a metal ring appeared, a handle embedded in the frozen ground. Is that a hatch? He asked. Only one way to find out. Together we pulled. The hatch groaned but wouldn't budge. I stomped on it with my boot, trying to break the ice sealing it shut. Ethan grunted, yanking harder, until suddenly it gave way with a sharp crack. Cold air whooshed up from the opening, a tunnel, dark and narrow, leading beneath the river. Ethan shone the flashlight down. No way. He actually built something down there. I exhaled slowly. Dad's safe house. We climbed down the narrow metal ladder, the sound of our boots echoing off concrete walls. The air was damp, thick with the smell of earth and rust. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a small underground room. Generators hummed softly in one corner. There were shelves of canned food, a cot, and a desk with several sealed envelopes. One envelope had my name on it. I hesitated before picking it up. The handwriting was familiar, Dad's, shaky but deliberate. Ethan stood close behind me as I tore it open. Inside was a letter. Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I failed to protect you in the world above. But it also means you survived, and that means everything to me. You were never useless. You were the strongest part of this family. I pushed you too hard because I saw in you what I never had. Courage. You were the only one who never asked for anything, and that broke my heart. I built this place to keep you safe. The people I worked for are dangerous. I tried to walk away, but no one walks away clean. This notebook holds their secrets, and they will come for it. Keep it close, and trust no one. If Ethan is with you, forgive him. He didn't know the truth either. Tell your mother.
I'm sorry.
And Rachel, whatever happens next, don't stop living. Don't let this ruin you. The world needs people with hearts like yours. Dad. My vision blurred. My throat tightened as I whispered. He knew this would happen. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. He built all this to protect us. I nodded slowly, and we left him behind. Ethan sank onto the cot, his face pale.
No.
He made us leave. He wanted us to find this. I wiped my tears, folding the letter carefully. Then we do what he couldn't. We end this. Ethan looked up sharply. End this? Rachel, we're teachers, not soldiers. I'm not saying we fight them, I said firmly. But Dad's notebook, this evidence, could expose them. We take it to the police, or the media. Someone who can help. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we have to be smart. Before we could say more, a loud thud echoed from above. Ethan froze. Tell me that was the wind. I shook my head. Another thud followed, heavier, closer. Footsteps. They found us, I whispered. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and turned it off. The room plunged into darkness. We crouched low, listening as the sound of boots echoed through the tunnel.
My heart hammered in my chest.
A man's voice shouted, They're down here. Move. Ethan's hand tightened around my arm. Back door, there has to be one. We fumbled through the darkness, feeling along the cold concrete walls. Then my fingers brushed a lever. I yanked it down. A section of the wall groaned and slid open, revealing a narrow passage. This way, I hissed. We sprinted through the passage just as flashlights flooded the main room behind us. Voices shouted, Go, go, go. Ethan pushed me forward. The passage turned sharply upward. Another ladder. We climbed fast, boots slipping on the metal rungs. When I reached the top, I shoved open another hatch. Cold air rushed in. We were outside again, on the other side of the river, hidden by thick pine trees. Ethan pulled himself up, gasping for breath. You okay? Yeah, I panted. Keep moving. We ran through the forest, branches whipping against our faces. Behind us, we heard shouting and dogs barking. Then in the distance, a low rumble. Helicopters. Ethan stopped, chest heaving. We can't outrun that. I looked down at the notebook in my hand, Dad's handwriting, his secrets, his warning. Then at the frozen river behind us. Maybe we don't have to outrun them, I said quietly. He frowned. What are you talking about? I tore the last page from the notebook, the one with the map and the code, and stuffed it into my jacket. Then I threw the notebook itself into the river. Ethan's eyes widened. Rachel, what are you doing? Making sure they can't use it against us, I said. They can't find what doesn't exist.
He stared at me, speechless.
Then slowly, a small, proud smile formed on his face. Dad would have done the same thing. The sound of the helicopter grew louder, but we didn't stop. We ran deeper into the forest, hearts pounding, the cold burning our lungs. By sunrise, the noise was gone. The world was quiet again. We reached an old cabin near the ridge, abandoned but standing. Inside, we collapsed onto the dusty floor, exhausted and freezing. Ethan looked at me and whispered, "So what now?" I pulled out the torn page, the one with the code. "Now," I said, "we figure out what Dad was really protecting." Ethan tilted his head. "You think there's more?" I smiled faintly. "There's always more." We both looked out the cracked window as sunlight spilled across the snow-covered forest. For the first time in 16 years, I wasn't cooking for anyone. I wasn't begging for approval. I wasn't waiting for love that never came. I was living for me, and somehow I knew, wherever Dad was, he'd finally be proud.